Because it was not like the ideal, like, oh, the dentist is going to help mentor me and all this stuff. No, it was like sabotage, and it was just like really, really bad.
She just ate a lot of shit. And then, but you also had to learn a lot.
Oh my
about
gosh,
the
did I
business
learn
stuff.
I learned like every single thing because like I couldn't count on the staff, couldn't count on the dentist. The patients weren't great. It was just like a big cluster.
All right, so Alex, as you know, I've gotten to make more friends in the last few years, which is always like I feel like my number one goal in life.
How are you getting more friends? I'm like not having.
I know. I feel like I just suck all that from you. But no, since we partnered with the DSO, right? There's a lot of partners in that DSO now, right? That one's grown a lot. So we've gotten to connect and meet a lot of people. And one person recently I've gotten to meet is Jason. So we just connected through like a group chat that we're in and stuff like that. But he has like such a cool story. So he has a practice, but then he also started his own like implant center called FIXT, which is out in Massachusetts. And then he kind of went into saying, all right, well, let me create my own lab as well for that. Mm-hmm. And then him and his wife just bought another practice recently out like in Rhode Island. And so when I was hearing about all this, I was like, oh, we should just have him on the podcast because the guy's got a ton of knowledge, ton of experience. Yeah. And I think it would just be a cool story to share about like a dentist who's, gone kind of and just expanded their scope from just being like a dentist to like owning practices to now owning like, implant and cosmetic centers to starting their own lab. He just seems like he does a lot and he does it quickly and he does it well. So I figured he would just be fun to have on. So thanks for coming on, Jason.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for asking me.
So can you kind of tell us, there's two things I wanted to talk to you about and maybe just understand how you did this, how it's been working, and like just good advice for people that are listening to the podcast. But can you kind of go through your story at first on going from having a practice to like how you decided to start FIXT, and then like how you even said I need to siphon off and do my own lab, and we can kind of go through that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I was born. Well, no. How far back?
Maybe not that far back.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, my original practice was in a small town called Whitensville. It's in central Massachusetts, close to Worcester, if you know the area. And this was, Whitensville is this blue collar mill town. To most folks that grew up anywhere close to a city, you would say, this practice is out in the woods. I showed up actually as an associate at that practice almost 20 years ago, about 18 or 19 years ago. And, as an associate, I had some big ideas, some things that I wanted to do, started to sort of reshape some of the office culture. I was fussy about certain details. After working there for about 2 years, the senior doctor, he wanted to do a 50-50 partnership. We had very different business minds and mindsets. And so we entertained that and investigated that for a little while, for a few months. I ultimately said, I'm going to pull the plug on that plan. I just don't think that we get along as sort of a boss and an associate, but as partners, our decision making is different. Instead, I actually came to Mikey a couple months later, and I said, well, what do you think about doing a role reversal where I will purchase 100% of the practice and you can work as my associate? And he said, well, let me sleep on it. And I distilled it for him where I said, I want to own my own practice in a year. I'd like for it to be this practice, which I know is not technically for sale. But if it's not, no worries. I'll give you plenty of time, plenty of runway. I'm going to go find something else to go do outside a competitive range. I said, so really your choice here is, would you rather work for me or without me? And that's where I think Mikey called me at 6:45 in the morning the next day. And he said, all right, I slept on it. I'd rather work for you. And so we arranged the role reversal. That ended up being, so I was 28 or 29. And Mikey worked as my associate for, I think, 12 years.
Wow. That's totally out of the box thinking. That's really cool.
So that's pretty cool because you just graduated school, right? You're 28, right? You've been out, like you said, for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool that you kind of had the balls to like ask that too, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of people we've talked to people about like people are just nervous to have like the hard conversation or the awkward conversation. And I think as we hear more about your story, I think that shows that the fact that you were able to even ask that, right? Just
but even before that, taking that step where he presented something and you're like, no, I don't want 50-50. Like other people would be like, okay, I guess this is my only option. I'll take it. Even though like the circumstances aren't as good, or like you said, the mindsets aren't, aligned. Even just knowing that is a huge thing too.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that tends to be my nature, is to be, sort of, black and white and direct. And I say all the time that, the truth is the easiest story to keep straight. So, might as well tell it that way.
Yeah.
And so, when I had to explain that clearly to Mike, either, you can work for me or you can work without me. I'll make it easy for you either way. It ended up being, great, because he really did enjoy running the business. I thought that I would. I didn't maybe as much. There are those moments as the business owner where you say, man, I wish I could just, walk out the front door and quit. I think today would be the day I give my notice. Turns out the bank won't let you do that when you own the place.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy.
Oh, yeah. Which it kind of puts you in a mindset of like, if you go in the mindset of like you have no option, right, it kind of forces you to probably work harder, right, when you don't have an out.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, agree. So Mike had a couple of health scares. He's a little later in life, and so had to take some medical leave at a time, and that opened up the door to bring in an associate. And so we did this actually a couple of times. Mikey was looking at retirement and ultimately did retire. And it was myself, and we had 3 full-time associate doctors that were there. Around 2021, we found the real estate. So in our Whitensville practice, we actually took that practice fee for service back in 2012 or 13. And this was back before this was popular, right? So, and again, this was the kind of town, and our consultants told us, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. You're going to destroy the practice. You can't take this kind of a practice, which is, focused on sort of insurance and working class, blue collar mill town. You can't do that. And so I for me, it was, I don't like practicing this way, beholden to the insurance companies. I would rather destroy the business than work like this. And so those are the dice that we're going to roll here. Fortunately, we didn't destroy the business. Things retract and shrink a little bit. We learned a lot about how to do this better, but it took about 8 or 9 months of things kind of feeling like it was shrinking and retracting. And as when I coach and sort of mentor other docs about doing this themselves in their own practices, as we had some patients who will invariably leave because they say, I'm only here because, I want a $0 copay for hygiene visits. That opened up space to see other patients who would call that we otherwise would have been booked out for. And so we had room in the schedule now to see higher quality, higher value clientele, even in this small town. And it ended up being one of the best business decisions we ever made. And so, once we got about 9 months later, there was light at the end of the tunnel, and we said, all right, things are starting to look up, or it doesn't appear to be so dire. Once we got to be about a year to a year and a half after terminating our contracts, it was a no-brainer, hands down. If you and your team believe in this, and if you do this the right way, there are the right reasons to do this and the wrong reasons to do it, and there are the right ways to communicate why you're taking a practice fee for service. And it's not all about the money. It's really about the quality and what you want to have available and on the menu for your clientele. Patients appreciate that. You have that conversation with them, they're in. And so we were very successful with that. We brought in, again, those additional associates. The practice was very, very busy. We had some cash flow where, it was now possible for us to look at some real estate. We had lots of people that were coming from, outside, an hour, 2 hours, 3 or 4 away to come to this practice. We'd have a lot of folks who would call and they would say, I've heard of you. I've heard of Dr. Tubo. And they would say, but where the hell is Whitensville? And they would explain, this was back before everybody had this on their phone too. where we are, and they would say, I'm not driving all the way out there. It's out in the middle of nowhere. I thought you were in Boston. I thought you were in the city. So we heard that for many, many years. So Jenny and I always kind of felt like we should look at a space in the city or into Boston. Come 21 and 22, we found the right real estate. It's retail, street level, retail windows. I had sort of a vision for what I wanted. That's actually really neat. If you guys ever get to come out and visit Boston, come see the practice. It's pretty neat the way that we present that out at the street level.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, we've never been. Have you been to Boston?
No, never. Actually.
I haven't been either. It's a city I've always wanted to go to, right? And just never been out there. I mean, I think out east, we've been to New York once, and then I had because I did the military route, right? So I did 5 weeks in Rhode Island, right? At whatever the naval base was there. I forgot the name of it, but the one that's in Rhode Island, in Newport. And then that's kind of it. I haven't really done a ton out east.
Yeah, Boston's great to visit. Come in the summer or come in the fall. Otherwise it's snowy, cold, and muddy. But those other 6 or 7 months of the year, it's great. But yeah,
nice. So then did you relocate everything over there, or was this like a second, like a spin-off office?
So so FIXT was a scratch startup. And so, that is something that Jenny and I wanted to do. We wanted to know, if we built it all on our own from nothing, what could we build? So we were in charge of the design. I actually drew out the floor plan and the flow. The architects and designers that were starting with us, I didn't like anything that they were coming up with. I pretty much kicked everybody out of the room. I said, give me 2 weeks. Jenny has these photos of me cutting up pieces of the blueprints. She called it, the beautiful mind drafting table, where I put everything together like
you actually don't, in your head, it's all making sense at that point, but it could just be a bunch of
it looked crazy. It looked crazy. And it's funny because I could look at that from fresh eyes and say, I know this looks crazy, but there's a method to this that I'm going for. We got introduced to an excellent architect and designers. They were able to sort of see the vision and execute that. A scratch startup is something that I might not do again. I think that's one of those things as a certain type of business owner. That is an itch that you need to scratch, right? And for us, it was that. But it's something that when I advise younger dentists or those that are looking for, what should I do? I think I want to build something on my own. I tell them pretty frequently, I would start with an acquisition, 99 out of 100 times now. You might want to still do that scratch startup, but you open your doors and you have to market. You have zero patients. You're starting from nothing, and there's a lot of risk that's associated with that.
I mean, that's kind of what we ended up. So like Alex's story was, when I was in the military, she bought a practice, right? So she did an acquisition, and it was a practice that was failing. It was doing $350,000 a year, right? And like the dentist was slowing down. It was in a big office building, and I feel like that experience, she learned.
Shit.
So
you
much. You learned so much.
Because it was not like the ideal, like, the dentist is going to help mentor me and all this stuff. No, it was like sabotage, and it was just like really, really bad.
She just ate a lot of shit. And but you also had to learn a lot.
Oh my gosh,
did I
learn
stuff.
I learned like every single thing, because like I couldn't count on the staff, couldn't count on the dentist. The patients weren't great. It was just like a big cluster.
So like you built the systems.
It really depends. It's like which kind of like shit do you want to eat? Like, is it like, let me do the acquisition because there's going to be problems with that, or the startup? Right. There's equally problems with that too, and it's like
but I think on your end, if you could go back though, like kind of what Jason was saying though. You kind of learned on the acquisition a lot of those mistakes. Yeah. You ended up selling it like 2 years later and kind of flipped it. Yeah. And then we did 2 startups. But you went into those startups with a lot of knowledge.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like the risk reward part of it, like the acquisition was less risky. Like I didn't have to fork over $600,000 or whatever, to start a practice or like build it at the minimum. It was like less money. There was like patients coming in, like there was already cash flow, right? So there is less of a risk versus like opening on day one with nothing, only the people that you hired. And if you're not one of those dentists that we know that has like a finance background, right? Or something like that, you're going in like really uneducated. There's a lot to learn. Yeah.
That makes sense, Jason. All right. Sorry. I sidetracked us. Okay. So now you're on FIXT. You started it up and it's 2021 or 2022? If you like our podcast, check out Alex's newsletter, Just 2 Minutes. It's full of great advice, which makes sense considering it's her thoughts and not me sidetracking her every 2 seconds. You can subscribe at coupleofdentists.com. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the pod.
So yeah, this was end of 22.
Okay.
It took a little bit. We kind of softened, the market where, we put out some print advertising. We had some patients who were out in sort of this locale anyway that were commuting out to the other practice, and so we probably brought about 100 people over here because it was more convenient for them. And so that paid the bills and allowed us to do some slow and steady growth. We sort of found our niche was doing, and so FIXT. I'm a fan of dual marketing, so I came up with dual meaning marketing. And so to dentists, FIXT means non-removable.
Yep.
To patients, FIXT means solved, right?
Yep.
And so Jenny and I wanted our new practice. We don't do any removable prosthetics. So if you're looking for an RPD or dentures, we're not the place. But when it comes to implants or full arch or sort of prosthodontic porcelain rehabilitation, et cetera, whether it's a couple of teeth or the whole mouth, this is the place. And we started building FIXT, the practice, and it was actually during the construction. I built a lab in the back corner that was meant to be sort of my space for grinding. My technicians, who I worked very close with for some years, they were down in Florida, had actually come around and they had a job offer that they were going to relocate from Florida, go somewhere else. I had this conversation with them that someday in the future I'd like to have my lab in-house. They came to me and said, before we make sort of this move or this decision, we want to know, I know that would be early, but is that something you would entertain?
Wow.
My wife and I talked about it very briefly before we said, yes, let's make it happen. And so the back corner laboratory sort of became our ceramics lab. We relocated them up from Florida to Boston. As we were now operating FIXT and I have the lab in-house, we were doing some teaching events for full arch and dental implants. And so we'd bring in doctors from our local study clubs and those that are just interested in implants. And I've always been sort of an open book. I'm happy to share and teach my dentist 2 blocks down the road, about the things that I do, because I believe in the rising tide. The more there's more dentistry out there than what most dentists know to even diagnose or to see. And so, if we share with them what's possible, they're going to find cases that they say, I might know how to treat this that I wouldn't have otherwise, but I see something here that I wouldn't have seen, but I don't want to treat or don't know how to, and they're going to refer that patient to us. And so I love teaching my neighbor doctors here. We were doing these teaching events, and they would perhaps say, I'm really interested in doing full arch implants, or maybe I'm not. That's what I learned here. But pretty universally, these docs would say, but whether I'm doing implants or not, can I use your lab? And initially, that conversation always went, well, my lab, that's my lab. That's just for us, for my associates, for other, our partner practice out toward Worcester. We don't have that. Jenny and I heard that consistently enough that, we said we need to break the lab out into its own entity and build it into its space. So actually that's here in the background is the new laboratory. It's about 3,000 square feet, stations for two CAD designers. Behind me with all the lights back there is what we call camp. That's where all of the equipment, the computer aided milling and printing happens. And then 4 ceramic stations in the back. And so we do a fully digital workflow, but we stack and paint beautiful feldspathics onto. So it's sort of this, the classical, very pretty outcomes and results, but tying that into a digital workflow. So we don't work with dentists on the outside. So if they want to, send impressions or casts, we're not the right lab for you.
Okay, so it has to be like they send an STL file or they send something through their scanner to you, and then you guys can receive it. Yeah, so can you quickly, because this is something outside of like the scope of what I ever either A, was interested in doing, or B, probably could never even do if I wanted to, right? So that's not saying one of those like, oh, I could do it, I just don't want to. I don't think I could do it anyways. And you never really got into it either, Alex.
No, I'm not.
Like
I'm
the whole,
not big
digital
into that.
workflow on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Can you go through on a dental lab? What are the things you needed or you need now to like run a digital workflow and have your own dental lab?
So what are the things? Meaning, what are the things that you need?
Yeah, like
As
the
the
equipment, like
dentist?
like what is the workflow, right? Like someone comes in, they send you a file, right? You get it. Can you go through like the process from like receiving that? And let's just use the example of they want to do I don't know, an upper, like they're doing like an all on X case and they just want to do like an upper, right? Is what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
So can you just go through like what's needed and how they do all that? Like
Yeah,
from
of
your
course.
end?
So,
Yeah.
ideally, and again, it's interesting working as a laboratory because you get to see the sort of the diversity and the differences of doctors, different stages of their career, different backgrounds and training. Some are super detail oriented. Some you have to really kind of drag the information out of them. But what we want to start with, the basics is going to be, photos of the patient. It's going to be your examination data, right? We want photos. We want intraoral scans that show the teeth, the current condition, what's there. Sometimes we'll take and incorporate a cone beam into that as well if they need some assistance or help with building a surgical guide. Typically, we're going to take these intraoral scans, we're going to take photos, we're going to do a digital wax up in exocad. We'll design what we want the outcome to be, and then either we can assist and consult with the doctor, or the doctor, depending on the level of control freak they are, they may plan out the surgery themselves, right? Based on it's a prosthetically driven workflow, right?
Yep.
And so we do a fully digital design, digital wax up. Doctor can then approve. Usually I tell them, don't bother presenting that digital preview to patients. It's so confusing. You're telling them, I'm going to give you permanent teeth. We're going to make it look good and fit your face. It's pretty rare that you're going to find someone who's unhappy with what they see when they're coming from nothing to something. And so, yeah, that's where we start with is sort of those basic records. We'll then book a surgery day with them. We'll either sometimes go to some of these local practices ourselves, or if we're working with some of these offices remote, so if they're out of state, we'll start with that data. They're going to do the surgery. They're going to place their implants. They're going to take an intraoral scan with the scan bodies. One of our requisites is that we need to work when we're doing a digital workflow for All on X. You have to have a photogrammetry system. Our favorite is the ICAM system. It's just the most accurate, hands down. It's pretty. We've tried to blame it for errors in the past, and we can never stick it to ICAM.
Okay.
It is tried and true. And so photogrammetry, intraoral scans, updated photos. We can then design the All on X prototype. If we're doing it remote for the doctor, they'll then print that STL file themselves, and then they'll colorize it and deliver. If we are actually traveling to a local practice within an hour radius, we have a mobile lab that has a 3D printer. We bring the iCam, we bring the intraoral scanner. We have the CAD station. So the technician actually goes out there, just like you would bring a lab in to do a conversion. We'll actually come out and we'll 3D print in your parking lot. And so that's pretty unique. So far, we're one of the only ones that are doing that.
So I have some follow-up questions for you then.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, because I saw this photo somewhere, is your mobile, is that your Delorean that you have? Or is that a different thing? So for any of the listeners that don't know, Jason's, another really cool thing about him is that he has like a fully decked out like Back to the Future DeLorean, which that could be like a whole nother, I think, conversation on that. But
That's funny.
Is that, how do you incorporate that awesome piece of machinery into your business?
So that started as a joke, but it turned into real life real fast because Jenny couldn't say no fast enough.
Yeah, right. I feel like that's definitely a dude thing, right? It's like,
for sure. And she gets it now. She sees sort of the marketing, beauty of that. And so that when we had the sort of the plan for doing the van, the mobile lab van, the exterior of the mobile lab is meant to be, and I still have some of the parts we're outfitting it to be, the A-Team van, because we had the reputation as like, you guys are like the A-Team for labs.
Yeah.
And so the joke was, we might need a runner vehicle to make some local deliveries. We might not want to bring the whole van out. Maybe we get a small car, small vehicle for it. It was like, we could get a little Tesla, we could get something compact. Then it was like joking, we could get a Ferrari, we could get something real fast. And then the joke was, what if we stuck with the 80s theme and we had a DeLorean? And then it was, what about a time machine DeLorean? Mm-hmm. And that got the gears going. And so the following weekend, I came back, told the guys in the lab, I said, you can outfit a DeLorean to look like a time machine. And then the weekend after that, it was, I talked to a guy that builds these things. And the weekend after that, it was, I found a DeLorean that that would work for this. And then I had to go talk to Jenny about it. When I first told her, I want to spend some money on a car, she said no. And then 45 minutes later, she comes over, she goes, explain it to me. What do you mean? Because I know there's always a thought or a plan. And so I told her, it's a time machine DeLorean. She says, that sounds stupid. And she goes, but what's the pitch? And I said, well, we give people the smile they had in 1985 using technology from the future.
And so, that's actually really smart.
Yeah, that's right? Cool.
And it's the right demographic and it's the right generation, because the patients that we're doing this kind of work on, and the dentists as well that are doing this kind of dentistry, we all grew up watching the Back to the Future movies, and most of the guys and half the girls out there, they would see the DeLorean and say, "Oh, imagine, if I could drive that car." And so the first day that I actually, so I had a builder named Bruce, Florida, who built it, and this is what he does on the side. He's a retired space shuttle engineer. And so when we took delivery of it, we parked it out in front of the practice. And on the first day that we had it out there, we had 100 people walk into the front door just to ask, "What is this doing out there? What's the story with this?"
Cool.
And it's an organic conversation starter. And so if we make a delivery for a local doctor, the same thing happens in their practice. So that's one of those value adds. If we come deliver a full arch for you, just be ready. There's, an hour and a half long commotion that happens in your parking lot. Everybody in your hygiene department wants to take a picture. They're going to post it on their Facebook and Instagram. They're going to ask, why is that here? You're going to explain to them, or we'll tell them, it's our lab. They're kind of, goofy people. They but we do some really amazing high-end laboratory work. They take a picture. I didn't know you did full arch implants. I didn't know you did this kind of stuff. I'm going to go text my brother. I'm going to go text, people all over the place. This car that I saw, the lab, no other thing can you get lay people to get excited about and talk about your dentist, the procedures, or a dental lab.
It's kind of like, right? It's like a way to make it viral, right? Like through that. And that is, that's pretty creative. Mm-hmm. I mean, how is it, you don't have to say the numbers on it, but is it very expensive to outfit a DeLorean? Like, was it what you thought it was, or?
We all know Eric wants more friends. If you're enjoying this episode, share the podcast and then tell them to DM Eric so he can hit his quota of one new friend per day. Now back to the episode.
It was what I thought it was. What I can say is I've had 2 offers to purchase the DeLorean in excess of, around $300,000, which is significantly more than what it costs to sort of find it and outfit it.
Okay.
But so far it has a bigger job to do.
Yeah. See, and it's a car now it's like an appreciating asset. That's pretty cool. Nice. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. That's again, nice thinking outside the box.
Yeah. So, okay. Couple other questions on like the lab stuff. And then what we should probably do is we should probably do another episode at some point and go into your next story too about the whole, like, you recently buying a practice right in Rhode Island and trying to do all that. So let's do that, because this one's so interesting. I want to focus a little bit more on this. Okay. So kind of the last couple of questions I want to ask were for practice owners, right? Like, we know the challenges of running a practice. We kind of know what the margins are. Can you just tell us overview, like the differences or similarities between running a dental practice and running a lab, and maybe focus in on like, managing the culture, managing the people? Is it better or worse, right? Are margins better or worse, right, with a dental lab, and that, like, those kind of things?
So, there are actually a lot of similarities there. In the dentists, they're familiar with running the dental practice. In the dental lab, the dentists are your patients, right? And there's this sort of variety of personalities and needs, and some that want to be very involved and some that don't want to be very involved. Different levels of sort of awareness level. But if you market, your lab, or you market your practice appropriately, and you're looking to, for me, I don't want to be everyone's dentist, right? That there are certain types of procedures that I say, like, I'm probably not the best dentist for you, but you don't want to spend that kind of money or to pay my fees, for me to try to make the first denture that I've made in 6.5 years. It's a waste of money. Go find somebody who loves it, and they're going to charge you less. It's sort of my principle with the lab is that we don't need to be every dentist's lab. And I think a lot of dental labs want to be everything to everyone. They look at every dentist client as, we need to keep and retain everyone, make them all happy. Now we want to make our dentist clients happy, but that's what I mean by, if you want to send, alginates and stone models, or if you're sending us sort of bad records, we're going to have that conversation with you. We're not going to be mean about it, but we're going to say, we want to deliver a high quality for you. We need you to be able to give us something that we can read and that we can work with. And we'll help coach you through that and get you there, because, we assume you're working with us or want to work with us because you want to achieve that higher level or something that looks nice and works well. But we're going to be honest with you if we can or can't do that. And that helps to filter out your clientele. So in the lab world, it's, filtering out your dentists who are like your patients versus the practice. The margins, it can be the same. There's some procedures and cases in dentistry that you look at it and you say, hey, when it's all said and done, I spent so much time kind of managing this personality. I lost my shirt in the end. I wish I never even treated this one. The same can happen in a laboratory, but there can be these really big wins also where you get some great doctors, you get somebody who's really just sort of into the groove of, they get it. You kind of click and you're doing great work together. It's profitable for everyone. It's streamlined, it's smooth. And so we're still new. We're still sort of finding, we have room to bring in still new clientele. We don't have every ceramist station filled and ready yet, but that's one of the growth projects of this year is to locally market, but we also take in lab cases from all around the country. So if docs, there's a different sort of technology or equipment requisite for some of them, but it's usually pretty easy to access, and we can walk most doctors through that. But when docs are looking for a lab that is going to walk with them and understand sort of the digital language, right? So and create something that looks handcrafted and beautiful in the end, and natural versus just milled and stained restorations, right?
Yeah.
We get kind of tired of seeing that. It doesn't have to be, I have to work with a lab technician, master ceramist who's in their 70s and 80s and, should have retired 10 years ago. We have now incorporated that master ceramics side of things to a digital workflow, which is pretty unique still.
Well, I think too, a couple things on that. So first, I found that as dentists, and I've had some other buddies who are they've built or, created dental softwares and stuff like that. And say their wife is a dentist, right? So they were the office manager, and then they created their own companies and did stuff within dental. And he'll always text me and be like, you guys as dentists are such hypocrites, because what we do is we'll bitch about the patient, right? And say right. Oh, this patient sucks, does this and this. And then we're assholes to the vendors, right? To the laboratory. And so we kind of tend to do that. So that's why I was curious on your end if you see it's just very similar to how it is in practices, right? Where you're coming at it as you're a dentist, but you're also working with dentists. Do you find
right.
It's very similar to where you've got great patients and you've got shitty patients. You've got great dental clients and you've got asshole dental clients. And I think what's good too is I think that's a mistake that everyone even makes with practices too, is even when we did startups, right? I mean, our skill set was never the same as yours. You've gotten very educated. You're doing all on exit. You're doing a lot of high end, really tough procedures, right? They're hard. They take a lot of education to do. We thought at least I thought you kind of have to be everything to everyone. Oh, when we open up the practices and the startups, right? It was well, you take Medicaid at first, we did, right? You take pretty much everything under the sun because you're just trying to grow, and then you can kind of shrink it down and not take as many insurances or drop Medicaid, do all that stuff. So that's kind of the plan or the process we did. But I will say, I think it's important for everyone to know too, it's okay, like you said, to not be everything to everyone. I feel like people are more successful when they know their path. Right? You can change it, but yep. you know what your niche is, and it all gears towards that, right? And I think I appreciate that you've been able to do that, to have the confidence to say, you know what? if client so-and-so is always going to send me alginates, I'm not going to switch my whole fucking model because one guy wants it, right? Like, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it. You guys can come on board with me and I'll provide that result for you, but I don't feel like I have to cater to everyone. I do feel like one thing after talking to you, and Alex, you're more like this than I am, and I feel like you are, Jason, is like, you guys just seem to know what you want, right? Like you said, you joke that you're probably a control freak with stuff, but I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Like, you're confident in what you want to do, you know what you want to do, and you just do it. And I think from just talking to you for a little bit, and like I said, we'll get you back on to talk about like that next process of that practice you guys just bought.
Sure.
But the biggest thing I've found with people that we've talked to that are like really successful, right? And if you define that either personally or like financially, right, is they tend to do a lot in a much faster pace than most others, right? Other people sit on stuff for 3 years, right? You know how many dentists out there were probably like, that'd be fun if I like had a Delorean. You just said in like 3 weeks you had it built and figured it out, right? Or like, hey, maybe I want to do a dental lab. That might be good. I'm not sure. And then you're like, let's do it. And so I feel like the decisiveness is probably one of the most important traits. I don't know, looking back on your life and where you've gotten to, do you feel like that's one of the biggest things that you're happy that you've been able to do, is just be decisive?
Yes, that is something that I mean there's the good and the bad of that, right? Is that, you know, I may not, have never been shy to pull the trigger. You know, so that's the you know, leap and then look at, you know, what you just did. And you know, there's some good principles in there in business where, you know, it's better to be first, or it's better to be early than perfect. And so, and that's hard for me to do sometimes too, because it's funny when you're saying, you know how many dentists will sit on an idea for 3 years or more. You know, and I have, it's funny, I was going through some of my notes of some patents that I had been meaning to work on, and some of them are 3 and 4 years old. And a couple of them have actually, I've been beat. You know, they were ideas. I've been kicking it around for a little while. And in the meantime, you know, somebody's actually engineered sort of the inevitable. And so I've crossed a few things off that list. You know, that said, yes, it is better to do and to execute. And I find that a lot with a lot of dentists, is that anxiety with being decisive. And, you know, when it comes to, they know, I can't tell you how many docs I talk to who they know they should be a fee for service practice. They want to, they need to terminate their contracts. They understand the frog in the pot, you know, principle of, you know, if you turn the temperature up slowly, you know, ultimately, you know, the frog doesn't jump out. And so they know, you know, these insurance contracts are suffocating them. But they're scared, you know, they're afraid, you know, if I do, when I terminate, you know, is everyone going to leave? No, not everyone's going to leave. Some people might, but a lot of them will come back, and you just need to be prepared for that. But if you don't do it, you can be sure you're going to end up in hotter water than you would have ever allowed yourself to get into, or than you meant to. And so there's a lot of benefit to just sort of getting out there and doing things. One of my sort of principles is, you know, make it fun. You know, dentistry is amazing. There's so many different things. You know, you got to find the parts of it that you enjoy, that you like. Focus on that. Be really good at that. And you don't have to be everything to everyone. You know, I found myself, I got into pros because I loved the engineering of partial dentures when I was a dental student, which was very, very weird. Today, I refuse to touch them. And it's what spurned a lot of my interest in sort of the design and the complexity of designing a metal framework. And today, you know, I would say it's an entirely, you know, dying or almost dead art form, that it's really, really hard to have a high quality framework made anymore. You know, but you find those things that you like, that you enjoy, and then focus on that and be really good at that. And you're going to make plenty of happy people. There's more work out there to do in dentistry and every other industry than there are people who can actually do it. And so don't make yourself miserable doing things that you don't like. And you got to find ways and make sure that you can have fun doing it. So, you know, I'm one of those unique guys that every now and then on warm, sunny days, I get to drive a DeLorean to work.
Yeah.
And,
nice. Well,
that's pretty cool.
Hey, thanks for coming on, and let's plan another episode and get you back on to talk about that next part, because you got such an
I can't wait to
interesting
hear.
story. And so thanks for coming on, Jason.
My pleasure, guys.